everybody, welcome to Hammer Down. I'm your host, Mike Bush, and this is on the Market Scale Network. Today's guest is super cool. We met at the ACT Expo. He's fairly new to the industry, the clean trucking industry, but also not necessarily new as a reporter. His name is Jay Traugott, and he is the senior editor at cleantrucking.com. Jay, welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, Mike, thanks for having me.
Appreciate you, man. So let's get right into it. Cleantrucking.com. Kind of based on the name, have an idea of what you're doing, but what's really the focus of the website?
Right. It's just not a clever name. Clean Trucking. It's part of the Fusible network. So some of our sister sites are CCJ, Equipment World, Overdrive, Trucks, Parts, and Services. But Clean Trucking was created, I believe, late last year, specifically for the purpose of covering the clean trucking and clean transportation space that's quickly emerging. So I joined in mid-April. So since then, I've been studying very heavily the freight and the clean trucking industry. And when we met at the ACT Expo in Las Vegas last month, the timing was perfect for me because I had about a month of preparation before the show to really study up. And then when I was at the show, I was really able to connect all the dots as to what's happening on the ground.
Got it. So 3 months in or so, one quarter into the clean trucking space, What's been the most interesting thing you've learned so far?
Definitely the variety of technologies that are out there and how the private industry is rapidly developing them. I think probably one of the biggest surprises that I have seen, and actually coincidentally, I just published an article today, is that sometimes the state and federal government is not able to keep up with the private industry's pacing. They're moving fast with the technology. They're figuring this out, but sometimes it has to do with permitting and zone regulations to set up charging networks, and a long list of stuff that, despite their good intentions, many state and federal governments, they're just not connecting right now, and you can see the frustration on the private industry's level, which is understandable.
Sure. Now, I actually think you've joined a really unique industry, and you've got a really unique challenge in that many of your readers, if I think of folks like CCJ and folks that are coming from Commercial Carrier Journal over to the Clean Trucking website, they might be skeptics or they might be outright haters.
Absolutely.
How are you finding your audience to be?
Excellent question. It's funny because I'm not going to name any names, but a lot of these industry executives from some of the major OEMs who I spoke to, they came in as skeptics too, and once they're exposed to the technology and they see that it's proven, they start changing their minds very quickly. So I can understand how the public can be very much skeptics right now, and I think a lot of that is, no pun intended, fueled by a lot of misinformation. I think deadlines, kind of like with the EPA's Phase 3 guidelines for zero emissions by 2040. Even though it's a decade and a half away, I think a lot of people in the industry don't like something being shoved down their throats, even though they have plenty of time to figure this out. I just think that knowing that that's hanging over them is not sending the right message, and they're not always seeing the positives that are happening with the industry as well.
Sure, I would agree with that. I think one of the biggest challenges is when so many trucks on the road are part of a small fleet, right? I think it's the number is 90% of trucks are part of a small fleet, 6 trucks or less. Yes, I've said that way too many times. But I always I think about a small trucking company who's just been told, look, the truck you've got, you probably bought it used. You're going to need to replace it with a new vehicle because there are no used hydrogen trucks available. There are no used battery trucks available. You're not spending $60,000 on a truck. You're spending $800,000 on a new vehicle. And I feel like, Jay, you're in that weird spot where you have to be the bearer of bad news, my friend.
Exactly. And no one likes to being the bearer of bad news. So what I try to do is, investigate and report on stopgap measures. A couple of them, is why don't you explore biodiesel, renewable diesel? Those are already working very well. in many states. A lot of trucking companies are already using them. You can get a biodiesel bolt-on conversion kit, and one company promotes that right now. And I even found out that it does not violate the vehicle's warranty. So, like little details like that. But I think in the space right now, like hydrogen, electric, or battery electric, they're getting all the focus. But I think some of these, smaller fleet operators need to, recognize, or they need to be told more, that there are solutions you can do right now to significantly reduce emissions, be in a better position with local and state and federal, government. And then there's also another piece I just did on, renewable natural gas. And these, again, that's a more expensive option than renewable diesel or biodiesel. But again, you don't necessarily have to get fully electric in order to start decarbonizing right now at a much more affordable or doable price.
Right. And to me, when you look at like some of the bigger shippers out there at ACT Expo, we saw IKEA, we saw a bunch of other companies, Tesla took the stage, of course. But really, the talking point is these big BCOs. The biggest of the big shippers are really focused on fleets that can deliver, sorry for the pun, but using less emissions, right? Like fleets that are going to create less emissions are going to, over time, really gain an advantage here. And that's not something that's going to go away. Am I reading the room right?
Yeah, I think so. But I think this is using large fleets. They're also, the test dummies right now. They can afford to invest in more so in risk. PepsiCo right now, they're running a fleet of Tesla semis. That's not a cheap thing to be doing, in that, no small fleet can do all that. So I think, what I would tell a smaller, fleet operator right now is to do what you can, look into biodiesel, renewable diesel. If you are looking for, used tractors, try to get them to be as modern as possible. But again, these are all things that you can do at a very affordable price, and also look into, the tax credits that are available out there at the state and federal level. They are even for bio and renewable diesel. And I'm not trying to specifically push alternative fuels, but in my 3 months on the news beat, those were they just jumped out at me as solutions they already know how to do. And also the fueling is exactly the same. They don't need to retrain drivers, or the retraining is very, very small. It's
right.
So again, there's options there right now.
Sure. And I think, one of the things that I find really interesting about this transition to, decarbonization is it's not going to be one fuel. When you look at the so-called electrification states, 14 states that are likely, or 13 states that are going to follow California likely, where if you're going to do work around the ports, you have to be zero emission at the tailpipe. So you're talking hydrogen or you're talking battery electric, whereas you're hitting on some of the alternative fuels that can really actually be competitive and or replacement to typical diesel. Are we going to see this sort of bifurcation or trifurcation of multiple approaches and multiple fuels? And where does the industry go from here, I guess, is my question.
I think that's the $1 million question. Everyone, one of the constant themes I heard from ACT Expo, from top executives, is that the industry is kind of going through some growing pains right now. They're still trying to figure it out. And then the other thing they kept saying is that it's not going to be just one power source. It's going to be a combination. We're going to see, battery electric. We're going to see hydrogen combustion. That's a newer thing coming out right now. I believe Volvo Trucks is working on that. So yeah, it's going to be a combination of them for the foreseeable future. And that's not a bad thing, because it allows everything to be tested to see what really works. So instead of just thinking, 2040, think beyond. One of the biggest takeaways I took from ACT Expo is that America needs to build a 21st century shipping infrastructure. And right now we're transitioning from that 20th century one of truck stops where, they just fuel with diesel, to something, more technologically advanced. And that's just what happens naturally. We went from, steam trains, shipping freight across the country. We still are, in a lot of ways, to combustion powered tractor semis, and now we're going to alternative power semis as well.
Yeah, understood. Jay, how did you end up here, man? You so clean trucking for the past quarter, but career path in front of that. What were you doing before? What attracted you to this industry?
Yeah, well, for about 13 years, I was an automotive journalist. So, it's when you're in your 20s and 30s, it's great fun. You get to travel the world, do some really cool test drives, meet some really fascinating people, see some amazing cars, and get incredible access to stuff that you normally never would. It was a dream for the kid who was reading Motor Trend magazine since he was like 8 or 9 years old. But also during most of my tenure as an automotive journalist, I started that in about 2010, I believe. In 2012 was when the Tesla Model S came out. And that was the first battery electric vehicle that proved EVs were possible. Up until then, you had the Tesla Roadster and, a few other things, but none of them really had the range. And all of a sudden the Model S comes out and it just changed everything. It looked great. It drove great. The technology was advanced of anything else on the market. So for, 10 years of my automotive journalism career, I was watching the EV space develop and grow and grow and grow. I saw, GM file for bankruptcy, and then they reemerged, and they were saying we're all in on electric. You've seen Ford Motor Company split off. They have their combustion engine division now, then they have their electric division as well. So as an automotive journalist, I saw the change in the auto industry happening before my eyes, and also new publications rising up. So probably about a year ago, I just started looking into, making a change in Newsbeat. I still wanted to cover transportation. The automotive industry, at least in journalism, was getting kind of saturated. A lot of journalists out there. And when the opportunity came up to join Clean Trucking, it was the perfect combination of interests for me that were all to go into one thing. Industry news, covering, if you look at the automotive industry, it's, you have manufacturing, you have government regulations, you have transportation, it's all wrapped up into one, and it's really fascinating. And you have the same thing in transportation or in freight transportation.
Sure.
And now you're seeing the freight transportation undergoing a rapid change in powertrain technology. And, it was just a combination of all my interests. And like I said, when the opportunity came up, I jumped on it.
All right, you said something about doing test drives. I got to ask, what is the coolest car you've personally driven?
Oh, man. Well, it was definitely it depends on the situation. I drove a Ferrari 488 GTB on a racetrack, and which is incredible. My experience driving a Ferrari on public roads is just kind of a waste of time, considering what those cars are able to do on the track. Sure. I went to the Goodwood Festival of Speed one year as a guest of McLaren, and we got to drive McLarens down from the factory in Woking down to Goodwood for the festival, which was my first experience driving on the right-hand side of the car and on the left-hand or on the opposite side of the road. And when you come to a roundabout, you kind of freak out, especially when you're in a $400,000 supercar. So,
right.
But I think all those experiences of driving those cars, it really helped prepare me for what I'm, what I'm at now, because you get a better feel for the technology, the years and the godly amounts of money that goes into the R&D and the development. So I came into this space with a very clear understanding of how this industry works in many ways. And then when I went to ACT Expo, I had to relearn what I thought I already learned.
Got it. Okay. Awesome. Love that. One of my favorite questions to ask reporters is, when you publish a story, do you go look at metrics? Do you start to look at, oh, I know if I write about the Tesla Semi, I'm going to get more page views? And how does that weigh against what
Yeah.
your sort of journalistic integrity and or your heart says, this is a story I really want to tell?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And the answer really boils down to the publication you work for. What are their editorial standards? What are their goals? How is their advertising? There's a whole business side to it that, as the reporter, you're not always fully exposed to. You're aware of it, but there's a lot going on behind the scenes that you need to be aware that you're unaware. So when I go to write an article right now, I'm simply doing investigating pieces that interest me because I had questions about it.
Sure.
And I got a lot of story ideas from the expo.
Yep.
And you have all your interviews recorded, and you just follow up with them. My publication, there is an SEO team, but they work in different ways. Instead of just trying to always insert keywords, there's other ways to get your content out there. But also, you got to. I'm always bearing or keeping in mind, you want to be honest with your readers. You don't want them to think that they're just being clickbaited
Right.
into anything, because you lose your credibility instantly. And so right now, it's my reporting. It can be summarized in one word: it's fair.
Okay.
I just try to find out as much information as I can. I love getting quotes
Sure.
from top executives. Sometimes I go into an interview not knowing what I want the piece to be about. I was just given the opportunity to interview this individual, so it's like, all right, so let's go for it, and you investigate and you take it from there. Now, going back to what you said about optimizing content, I'm still a little new at the job as well, and same with Clean Trucking. It's a pretty brand new website, so
Sure.
we're still building up that audience. And right now I'm just trying to get material that involves like renewable energy, just stuff that I know people are already searching for.
Got it. Okay. Eric Johnson is a reporter over at the Journal of Commerce and was was a previous guest on Hammer Down. And I asked him this question. I love his answer, so I'm gonna ask you the same.
Sure.
As a PR person who wants to get in front of you, what is the best approach?
The best approach, or the best initial one, is to reach out to me directly. And through email, phone call, doesn't matter, and pitch something to me. Hey, I have this piece. I've seen your previous work. I like it when a PR person has researched me in my publication. They see what I've written about. They think, hey, I think this would go really well. I don't want to do, like a pay. It can't be a paid promotion. That's something else.
Right.
It's done and it's fine. That's just not my main area. So I think for a PR person, reach out to me, pitch something to me. And part of the way they can do that is, as I said, hey, I saw your article on this. I really liked it. It got me thinking about this. Would you be interested in da, 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 da? That's a great way, because it also shows that they're taking the time to read my publication, my work as well.
Got it. So do some homework. Number one,
Absolutely.
send stuff that's obviously relevant. Perhaps a continuation of a story that you're telling, or even counter to the story you're telling. Of course, there's nothing wrong with that.
That's fine.
And let's see, what are your PR person pet peeves?
Well, at Expo, somebody, literally one PR person, I'll never say from where, I already forgot their name, literally grabbed me by the arm and dragged me from one press conference I was at, like, hey, because they didn't get enough publicity in advance, and I happened to have a few minutes to spare. So I went along with it. To me, that's kind of unprofessional. You want to arrange this stuff in advance. Another, pet peeve is, I think you just mentioned it, just something that's irrelevant. They're simply just trying to raise their own star or their own stake in their company, and they're just not doing their homework. That's a major pet peeve of mine. It's like, don't waste my time.
I get you. Cool. Jay, one of my favorite questions for anybody that joins the show is, if you were talking to your younger self, or talking to, let's say, a new or recent college grad thinking about the logistics industry, and you can take this from logistics side, or you can take this reporter side. What's the one piece of advice you would give your younger self, or a new or recent college grad?
To my younger self, always keep an open mind. I think when I was in college, I studied communications, and got an English literature minor. I never imagined myself covering this space. Getting into auto journalism was, you have to be good, but I was lucky, right place, right time. So yeah, I would tell myself, keep an open mind. And to anyone else who wants to, if you want to get into, like, as a reporter for, logistics, transportation, any of it, the first thing you have to be able to do is write, and you have to be able to write well. That's just something you know how to do, or you don't. And once you do know how, you're always improving. It's always getting better. I'm not necessarily saying you have to go to journalism school. Sometimes coming out of college with an English, literature major is fine. You have to know how to write. And when you know how to write, you can adapt your writing style, and you can really explore your interests that way. It's a lot like a blank canvas.
Sure. So personally, I hate a blank canvas. It's way easier to be an editor. There are times where, like, I stare at my whiteboard and it stares back at me, and I get really frustrated. How do you overcome sort of writer's block? What are your tips and tricks?
Yeah, again, this is 13 years of experience. Probably the best thing to do when you get writer's block, and it happens all the time, is to take a break and do something else. Like, it can be something as simple as going out to the grocery store, just making a quick run, a few errands here and there, clear your head. Sometimes take a 20-minute power nap. Where the best thing is, don't panic. You and remind yourself, you've done this before, you've had writer's block before, and it always works out. And if you start kind of getting, anxious about it, it's just not going to, it's just not going to go well. So writer's block, it's going to happen. Take a few deep breaths, go to Costco, something like that, come back, restart again, and you're going to be okay.
All right, so Jay, I know people can find you on cleantrucking.com, of course, but where else should people go searching if they want to get in touch?
Yeah, they can always email me. My email address is on the website. Again, because Clean Trucking is still pretty new, we're still getting social media up and running on that. We do have a dedicated person for social media right now who I do work with pretty closely. So you're going to see more content coming up on the usual social media channels. But right now, the best way to reach me is through email. And I've already gotten a number of emails from readers asking questions, and it's good to get that feedback already.
Jay Traugott from cleantrucking.com. Thanks for being on the show, brother man.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Mike. Thank you.